And we will see this child being born again and responding even to the problems that are too big, too despairing, without hope. We'll see love and respect and relationship gaining power in places that we didn't think possible. A few weeks ago, I heard an earlier Boots on the Ground radio show, and they interviewed one of the architects of the surge strategy in Iraq. Now, you remember a few years back, it looked like Iraq was falling into civil war, and we sent a surge of troops. Well, it turns out that the surge wasn't only about sending more troops to Iraq, it was also a change in tactics. Before the surge, the war was being fought in a very conventional fashion. Lots of nighttime raids of houses looking for insurgents and patrols in Humvees. The most U.S. casualties were coming from the Humvees hitting IEDs or improvised explosive devices as they were on these patrols going to and from the dangerous cities and villages. Also, according to the strategist, through the nighttime raids, the soldiers were creating more enemies than they were finding, and they weren't developing any trust with the Iraqi people. This strategist suggested that they needed to build trust and relationship with the Iraqi people. Also, General Petraeus suggested this too. So the strategists, with others, trained soldiers in different tactics. Rather than driving to and from the areas they wanted to patrol and hitting bombs along the way, they stayed inside the dangerous villages and cities, and they started walking the streets, not to raid, but to meet the neighbors and build relationship. If they were armed for these walks, I can't remember the story, it wasn't as much as they wanted to be, because according to the strategists, the soldiers were very resistant to this new tactic, as you can imagine. They felt it made them too vulnerable to attack. It was too dangerous. But this strategist was able to convince them that they would be much safer if they could be vulnerable enough to meet with and build relationship with the Iraqi people on the streets. And it was only by building this relationship and trust that they would be able to calm the violence at all. And it worked. Once the soldiers got out of the vehicles and started walking among the people, building relationship and trust, their casualties went down dramatically. As they were vulnerable enough to meet the people started helping them. In the mornings, the soldiers started finding things like big circles in the road that were telling them where the IEDs had been buried the night before. Once relationships started forming, enemies became friends. People didn't want their friends to die. Now, what this means to me is that we started making progress in the war when we stopped treating it like a war, and our warriors became vulnerable and started trying to build relationship. This is the vulnerable child and the vulnerable way to salvation, being born in the most unlikely of places. Now, if God can bring salvation through love in a war zone, then God can bring salvation anywhere. If fear and violence can be overcome by vulnerability and relationship, even for just a little while, then we can start to believe that this birth story isn't just a cute little story we tell at Christmas time. This story is true. Then we start to wait with a glimmer of hope. If we're overwhelmed by the problems of the world, perk up, be alert. God is sneaking in the back door somewhere. If we are trapped in something, our sadness, our pain, relationships that are broken or iced over, in work we don't want or work we can't get, we can wait with hope. Soon God will give birth to possibility. Soon God will find a way to open a window or thaw the ice or break the cycle with love. Expect the unexpected. Look for the holy and unlikely places like a manger in Bethlehem. God will come, but not with fanfare. Instead, God will come like a weak, trembling cry in the middle of the deep, cold night. May God bless us on this journey of waiting. Amen.